From producing music with Janet Jackson and MC Hammer to creating unforgettable commercial jingles, Deb McDuffie's impact on the music industry is undeniable. Joining me to discuss her career, her collaborations, and her new coffee table biography is Jacksonville composer and producer Deb McDuffie. Welcome, Deb.
Good morning. How you doing, Ann?
Great. Nice to see you.
Nice to be seen.
So, Deborah, you are known as the first female composer producer in the advertising industry, and I want to ask you about it. But first, let's hear one of your stickiest ad jingles, which you produced in the mid-1970s.
Here's to good friends. Tonight is kind of special.
The beer will pour, must say something more somehow. So tonight, let it be low and brown. It's been
That's
so
great.
long.
So that's voices of Roberta Flack and Luther Vandross, and a very well-known commercial. So talk a little bit about what you were doing at the time. You were making commercials that almost sounded like records.
Well, that was my plan, to kind of fuse the advertising music into the record industry. So when people first heard the commercial, they didn't know it was a commercial. And all of a sudden, after about 40, 45 seconds, bam, let it be low and brown. They're like, what? We got a lot of complaints at first because, the consumers say, how could you do that? We were sitting there and listening, and then, it's a commercial. And we say that's what we intended, to keep your attention.
Yeah.
And then, our agency was the first to do that. I was at McCann Erickson at the time. And so you combine the record industry component with celebrity recording artists who were at the top of the charts at the time, and it's a win-win.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it would surprise some people to know some of the names that you worked with on these commercials because they had such enormous careers
Right.
on their own. And that includes people like Luther Vandross, as we said, but Patti LaBelle, Al Green, people that you worked with and you were able to bring along because of those relationships you had.
Well, the relationships developed as my career developed. Everybody got wind of what I was doing, and all the artists wanted to do commercials because they were free of the record companies. Record companies had no control over what I did, what I wrote, what I produced, and what the artist sang. So it was like a breath of fresh air for them to be able to sing something that they felt was them, that they wanted to sing, as opposed to what the record company told them to sing.
Mm-hmm.
So it became a very attractive alternative for a lot of big-name artists.
And you did work with a lot of big name artists, Janet Jackson, Wynton Marsalis. We mentioned MC Hammer, Luther Vandross, Michael Bolton, Gladys Knight, The Temptations. It is an
All the
extraordinary
Motown
list.
acts, the Spinners, the Four Tops, Shy Lights, all of them.
Yeah. And so were you ever starstruck working with these people? Or
I
was
was
it just a collaborative relationship?
I was too young and arrogant to be starstruck, quite honestly. It all happened. So I was 20 years old when I started, straight out of college. And within a year, I was writing and producing superstars. So it was just like it was meant to be. I used to, I just fell into it. And New York energy moved so fast that I really didn't have time to comprehend what my career was starting to look like.
And it was looking bright.
Awesome. It was awesome because I was the only Black female producer, not just in advertising, but in the record industry. There were none. And then I was the second female. There was one white female who had come a couple of years before me. She didn't achieve the notoriety I did because I produced celebrities, so that got more notice. But so the first Black and one of two women in the music industry. So it was like, wow.
How did you get there? I mean, you're from Jacksonville, then all of a sudden you're in New York making these incredible, well, you're from New York.
I'm from New
Okay.
York.
Yeah.
I went to college in Southern Ohio, which is a topic for another interview. And seniors always have to write a letter. Back then we did. Seniors had to write 3 letters requesting job interviews. One of my best friends' uncle was an exec at J. Walter Thompson Advertising Agency in New York, and I wrote him and asked him if he could refer me to some advertising agencies who do music, and he sent me back 3 names. They were all African American, the only African Americans in advertising at that time. And I wrote 3 letters, and believe it or not, I got 3 responses. And I ended up going with McCann Erickson because Billy Davis, who was my boss, had been a bigwig. He had been Barry Gordy's right-handed Motown. So he was not just in advertising. He had been successful, a hit maker in the record industry. And they flew me from school to New York for the interview and hired me on the spot. So I doubled up on my credits, graduated in spring, in April, instead of June, and went right to work at McCann Erickson, who was in the middle of doing Buy the World a Coke, by the way.
Yeah, you cut your teeth on one of the most memorable Coke commercials in history. Yeah. I want to listen to another memorable track that you did. Let's take a listen, and then I want to ask you about it.
Okay.
The workday's over. Now it's my time. Time to get it together with the best tasting beer there is, Miller High Life. So open a cold one and welcome to Miller Time. Oh, welcome to Miller Time. It's all yours. It's all mine. Bring your thirsty self right here. Time we grab a beer. But what you have in mind? Welcome to Miller Time.
Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee.
So that's actually Jeffrey Osborne.
That's Jeffrey Osborne.
On the vocals, which is extraordinary. I was surprised to see how many people did ads at that time, because I don't think of that as happening so much currently.
The whole industry has changed. You won't find celebrities doing music because there's no music left in advertising. They're either sampling something from the 70s and 80s, or they have sound effects, but there's no music like this music. I was literally paralleling the record industry, and a lot of the artists that I produced never did another commercial. If you think about it,
why is it that music has disappeared from commercials today?
Music in general has disappeared, but that's a topic for another show.
But I mean, is it not considered an effective tool for?
Not the way music has evolved.
Mm-hmm.
You know, back then, music was different. You could use it to sell a product. You know, it had structure, it had meaning, it had emotion, it had intensity. Now, the music is just about the beat. You know, and
well, so what is it that? What's the secret to a jingle that sticks?
Good songwriting for the type of jingles that I did. Good songwriting, and I spent a lot of time whenever I called on someone. The minute they said yes, I'll do it, I spent all of my time listening to every song they had ever recorded. So I became immersed in who they were as an artist, and then I wrote the jingle. So when they walked in the studio and heard something that they were floored. You know, my record company can't do this. How did you do this? And they loved singing it, and it was successful. And that's all the client cared about, because the client didn't really know black music back then.
And so you were kind of wrapping it around their own existing skills.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think you're credited with helping Luther Vandross sort of find his voice in a certain way.
Yeah. Well, the woo that he did that became his signature. It was on a Geno's commercial, which I don't know if I sent you or not. But we were in the studio. Singing background on that commercial is Roberta Flack and Patti LaBelle and myself.
Wow.
And he had a cold. He had a cold that day, and he was very vain about his voice. And he came in and said, "Deb, I can't do the lead today because excuse me," I said, "You won't. My client is out there. You're going to do it." So he reluctantly did it. And when we got to the Sizzling Hot, I just heard the sound, a musical sound imitating something sizzling. And I said, you know, what can you come up with that will make us feel it sizzling hot? And he created that. It took him about 4 takes to get it where he wanted it. But as he says in the BET documentary, the rest is history. Because every time he did it, the crowd went wild. So he never did it for another commercial.
Wow. You also ran Amateur Night at the Apollo for a number of years, which I think must be just an incredible and also very daunting task to produce, because the audience is known to be pretty tough.
Right. Extremely tough. I got booed off the stage myself a couple of times, and that was just for coming out to make an announcement. So they had no mercy. But the biggest challenge with that is they brought me on to replace Ralph Cooper Jr., who was fired. And so there was I was in every major New York newspaper when it happened, including a picture. So that's how big this was, because it was very ugly. Not me, but the whole transition. It was not handled the best way. But I streamlined the show down from 2 to 3 hours to an hour and a half. I brought in a whole new band with Ray Chu as the music director, and it just brought new life back to the show. And I created the Apollo legend moment, which is when the host would talk about an African American music legend.
You've done so much here as well. You've taught at multiple schools. You are the artistic director currently at the Ritz Theater and Museum. So much of this career captured in this new book. Can you just tell people in the last 15 seconds we've got here where they can find the book and what it's called?
The book is called Reign, REIGN, of the Jingle Queen. And you can go on my website, thejinglequeen.com. And there's links and there's an order form. The book comes in color. It's 500 pages or black print. And there is also an ebook. If you have any trouble finding the book, just email me at thejinglequeen@yahoo.com, and someone, probably me, will get back to you.
The Jingle Queen, Deb McDuffie. Thank you so much for being here. It's a
Thank
pleasure
you,
to
Ann.
talk to you.
Appreciate it.
All right.